Our next panelist is Maria Gravari Barbas, who's a good friend coming from Sorbonne with all her books at the background, a truly academic, that she's going to share her views, and also she'll talk to us about France and the situation that we've got in France. Thank you. Maria.
Yes, thanks, Dimitri. Dear colleagues, thanks for inviting me. I'm really happy to share this panel with you. I try to share my PowerPoint. Let me just see if it works. I guess it does. Yeah, wonderful. So yeah, Reignite Mediterranean tourism, and of course, it's very difficult not to speak about this publishing paradigm of 2019-2020. Several books were published on over-tourism, and I guess that we will have tens of books and papers in 2020 about COVID. So those are this is the new theme, in fact, of 2020. This is a picture from the Eiffel Tower. It presents this place as it is right now, or at least as it used to be during the last days, with no anybody, in fact, in the surroundings. So the question is, should we, after this, just reset the button and pass from the 2019 paradigm to the current paradigm? Or should we look for a new tourism ethos, for a new tourism development? And for me, this is the main question, in fact. Reignite Mediterranean and Leisure tourism invite us to ask ourselves some questions, eventually envisage crisis as a time for critical thought, imagine post-COVID as something different than business as usual, so as a possibility to critically think about tourism and its futures. And I was very interested to the loss of weight paradigm of Marina. So the question is, reignite or really reinvent? I believe that we need something different or something more, that laissez-faire approach here. We really need a new deal for the economy and a new deal for tourism. I wouldn't speak about a new normal. I would speak more about a new ethic. So can we eventually see the crisis as an opportunity? You spoke, Dimitri, about the prioritization of we over me, and I think this is a very, very important issue here. So reinvent tourism in new ways, transform this current situation, which is a kind of survival plan, into a plan of sustainable growth. Consider tourism as an engine for other sectors also of the economy, directly or indirectly connected to tourism. I think that this point is very, very important, because we cannot isolate tourism in our different countries. We need to think to tourism in a kind of systematic way, and clearly in a multi-scalar approach, in which, of course, the role of Europe is extremely important. The importance of the state intervention can be determinant. The implication of the tourism stakeholders is also very important. And of course, the responsibility of tourists. And I think that we must see those four factors all together and related one to each other. Speaking about Europe, well, I mean, no need to remind the importance of tourism for Europe. More than 27 million people working directly or indirectly in EU tourism sector. The problem is that a kind of normal, somebody would say, government reflex looks mainly inwards, and the ultimate objective of each state is to protect its own people. Each nation is that adapts solutions that appear best suited for each nation. And the problem is that sometimes we don't really consider our neighbors. Obviously, we cannot find a solution out of this. So we need a better coordination between states. We need coordinated measures to deal with this crisis by EU institutions. And we need, in fact, to consider that EU is a single market, and this single market today is at stake. So it is really crucial for governments to coordinate and for states to safeguard measures in order to address unfair competition. So a clear need for voluntary measures for EU. Of course, there are a lot of measures taken already, and I don't think that we have the time to discuss them very, very precisely here. But of course, there is clearly need for more. And then I will pass it to the importance of state intervention, because the recovery is dependent on the measures and the level of confidence of each country. And in fact, this will really make the difference between the states that will help, and I mean, will help the sector and the other states. I put here a table, which obviously, I mean, is not very visible in this screen. You can find the source here. Is on the WTO site. It presents the different measures taken by different countries. And I will eventually insist more on the measures of France. I took here 4 countries as examples. Clearly, we don't have the time to present them in detail, but I really would like to stress the attention on the measures of the French state here. In terms of fiscal policy, in terms of monetary policy, and also in terms of jobs and skills. Just to take the example of fiscal policy, France implemented 3 main axes: an immediate support plan for workers and companies for more than 45 billion euros, loan guarantees for 300 billion euros, 300, million euros, and also a plan to protect threatened companies. And there is also another 2 billions that will go to a solidarity fund for small businesses with less than 1 million euros of annual turnover. Businesses that, due to the crisis, no longer have income, or that have seen their income decrease by at least 70% compared to March last year. So you can see that those measures are really important, and they can really play a very, very important role for the recovery. And of course, in terms of monetary policy, aid of 1,500 euros for smallest enterprises, mobilization of the state for 300 billion, and also of BPI France to guarantee bank cash lines for companies affected by the pandemic, support by the state and the Bank of France. And finally, in terms of jobs and skills, an exceptional and massive mechanism of partial unemployment that has been implemented for all tourism businesses in France and beyond, of course. This does not only concern tourism businesses. So it's very important when we see the landscape of different incentives in different countries to see that really this state help will make the difference. We are not really in a kind of laissez-faire approach. The third point is, of course, the implication of the tourism stakeholders. The capacity and will of a company to focus on preserving the health and the safety of guests will be, of course, the main concern of tourists in the next summer. And of course, the difference will be made by companies that will care about sustainability on a communal, on a personal, and also on environmental level. This will be a very important criterion for the destination. And finally, the fourth point is, of course, the responsibility of tourists themselves, responsibility of tourists or visitors. This probably is more crucial than ever because tourists will be invited to consider alternative, different modes of traveling, to adopt themselves hygiene, so understand the risks they themselves represent for the others, and especially for more vulnerable people. So we need a systematic approach for Mediterranean tourism. It's very, very difficult to consider this in an isolated way in each country. Of course, each country implements a lot of tools and instruments, but this kind of systematic view, I think, is absolutely necessary today. I isolated here 6 points which seem very important to me today. Sustainability, total safety, the local as the new exotic, as it appears now, the deseasonalization, and also the reinvention of places, mainly through the reinvention of heritage values, what I call the 3 R's: reflexivity, reactivity, and resilience. And of course, those issues not only focused on tourism, but the importance to connect the tourism to other sectors of the economy and of the society. So tourism beyond tourism, if we can say. Speaking about sustainability, of course, this is today embedded as a core value for tomorrow's tourism growth. Of course, more and more people become sensitive to sustainable growth development. And this will make probably the difference between destinations. Destinations that will embrace sustainable growth will make a difference in terms of development of green energy projects, of investments that safeguard the national culture and the cultural and natural heritage, and also in terms of regeneration projects that really involve the local communities. And here I will take again the example of the role of the state with an example from France. You maybe know that France, the French state, has decided a very huge help to Air France. The French state granted 7 billion euros of support to Air France in order to face the consequences of the COVID crisis. 4 billion euros of loan guaranteed at 90%, and 3 billion of direct loan. Obviously, this aid is absolutely necessary. I mean, without this help by the French state, the company would expose to the risk of bankruptcy. Which is interesting for me is that this aid here in France is conditional of a new ecological commitment by the company. As the French state said, there cannot be state support with French money without a new important ecological commitment by the Air France company. This means, for example, a drastic reduction of domestic flights, where we can find a rail alternative, means for distances less than 2 hours and a half. Also, 50% reduction of the volume of CO emissions on those flights by the end of 2024, and target of 2% sustainable alternative fuels incorporated in aircraft tanks by 2025. So state support to Air France, which is, I repeat it, extremely important for the company, leads progressively also to a new paradigm of mobility on the French territory, and will change probably the patterns of mobility in the French territory. The second point I would like to stress is the safe destination as the utmost criterion now, because health and safety clearly have always been a key prerequisite to choose a destination, but now it becomes extremely important. Which is also interesting is to connect tourism issues with more general society issues, because obviously tourism safety and tourism health improvement means also enhancement of the quality of life of permanent inhabitants. The third point is local as the new exotic. So the importance of proximity destinations, proximity markets, since in fact leisure travel is expected to rebound first before tourism travel. So discovery or rediscovery of regional and national hidden gems, and also need to use other alternative means for those proximity, in fact, travels, trains, ferries, or cars. This will maybe lead to discover Mediterranean again, as it used to be the 19th century, as a winter, in fact, destination. So rediscover the winter season as it used to be in the French Riviera in the 19th century. So unveil hidden gems and offer different products of the Mediterranean regions, rediscover the Mediterranean hinterland, mountain areas, etc., etc. And of course, focus on heritage values and heritage seen here in a totally transversal way, cultural and natural heritage, tangible and intangible. And of course, this leads also more or less on a more slow tourism approach. The fifth point is reflexivity, reactivity, and resilience, because more than ever on those COVID times, it is really crucial to remain as flexible as possible, to continually adapt to the new challenges, which in fact change every day and sometimes every hour, to be able to deal with last-minute reservations and offer last-minute offers. To do this is important, it's necessary to ensure a perfect digital accessibility, be more creative, be more open, be more flexible, and of course, accept the fact that all of this will take time. It will take time, so a new understanding of the time factor. And my final and sixth point is tourism beyond tourism, because of course, a resilient tourism destination is also a resilient place for locals. And this is, I think, very, very important. This is true for investment in public health as well as in transportation. So it's extremely important, in fact, to invest in health. To invest in health not only for tourism, but also for the local populations, because the health of the local populations in a way become a kind of criterion for the tourism destination. So yeah, reset the button in a way, but of course with a very long-term, a very strategic planning. Communication and marketing, which happens sometimes, is not enough, clearly not enough. The idea is not only to open a country and to invite tourists to this country. Mediterranean countries need a much more complete strategic plan for future action, with a beginning, with a middle, with an end, with a short, mid-term and long-term approach. And finally, if I can finish in a kind of optimistic conclusion, let's see this crisis as an opportunity to bring together all involved and to agree upon a common vision and to deploy a really holistic strategy, again, going beyond the tourism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. That's I wish I could say that we have coordinated so well. So the presentation, your presentation was floating from Marina's. It actually floated really, really well. And I think you raised a whole range of issues, and especially on policy issues, in particular for the European policy, and how we can come forward with fiscal and monetary policies to deal with the issues that are being addressed for the time being. And then I really like the point where you are talking about the responsibility of the tourist to the destination. And I think this is part of the redesign and re-engineering tourism. And we really need to rethink tourism. As I said earlier, there are three stages in front of us. So the first one is to get out of the crisis. The second one is really to reignite tourism in terms of getting the engines going. And then we start looking to redesign a little bit of where do we really want to go. And I think given where we are, it's probably, we need to start looking to a strategy for 2030, because 2030 will be 7 or 8 years later. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's thought-provoking.